The wind screamed across the frozen planet of Allaris 9, where blue snow fell like shards of glass. The night was endless and the cold could kill in seconds. The alien woman, Leora, wrapped her thin arms around her small child, Ari, trying to shield him from the biting wind. Their shelter, a broken cargo pod, shook under the storm's fury. Leora's species, the Vernae, were not built for this kind of cold. Their skin was pale silver, almost transparent, and their blood flowed slower in freezing air. They had crashed here 3 days ago after escaping a pirate attack. Their ship was gone. Their food was gone. And now the temperature kept falling. Ari coughed weakly. His chest moved slower every time he breathed. Leora pressed his tiny hand against her cheek, but it was icy. She had never felt so helpless. On her home planet, compassion was a forgotten thing. The strong survived and the weak were left behind. But now she wished for a miracle. Through the howling storm, a faint light blinked in the distance. It was small, orange, warm, alive. Leora's heart raced. Could it be another ship? Or worse, pirates returning? She didn't care. Ari's breathing was fading. She wrapped him tighter in a piece of her torn cloak and stumbled into the storm. Each step felt like walking through knives. Her legs shook, her vision blurred, and the wind screamed in her ears. The light grew brighter, cutting through the white chaos. Then she saw it. A human outpost half buried in snow with its beacon flickering weakly. She had heard of humans. Strange, stubborn creatures from the Sol system. Rumors said they were dangerous, unpredictable, and too emotional. But they were also said to help anyone who asked. Leora had never believed that. In her world, compassion didn't exist. The door of the outpost was frozen shut. She banged her fists against it. "Please," she screamed through the storm. "Help us." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a metallic hiss. The door opened slightly and a figure stepped out. It was a man, a human wearing a heavy exosuit covered in frost. His visor glowed faintly blue. He stared at her, confused, as if seeing something impossible. "What the hell?" His voice came through the comm. "You're not from the rescue team." Leora tried to speak but collapsed. The man caught her before she hit the ground. That was when he saw the child in her arms. Ari's face was pale blue, barely moving. "Kid's freezing," he muttered. "Hang on." The human carried them inside. The warmth hit her like fire. Leora gasped as her skin burned from the sudden heat, but she didn't care. She clung to her child. Inside, the outpost was small, a survival unit for one person. Machines hummed softly, lights flickered, and the air smelled like metal and oil. The human quickly laid Ari on a cot and placed a heating pack on his chest. "What happened to you two?" he asked. Leora struggled to find words. "Crash, pirates. Storm." He nodded, his jaw tightening. "You're lucky I spotted your signal." He removed his helmet, revealing a tired but kind face. His short brown hair was wet with sweat, and his eyes, bright gray, studied her with concern. "My name's Ethan," he said. "You're safe now." Leora couldn't understand why this human helped her. He didn't know her. She wasn't from his world. Yet he moved quickly, preparing warm water, giving her food, wrapping her child in heated blankets. Ari's breathing grew steadier. His skin turned from blue to pale silver again. Leora watched in silence, feeling something she hadn't felt before. Hope. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. "Don't thank me yet. The storm's getting worse. We'll need to reinforce the walls before it buries us." She wanted to help, but her body was weak. Ethan worked alone, pushing crates, sealing cracks, checking systems. His movements were fast but calm. He didn't yell, didn't complain, just worked. When he was done, he looked at her again. "You and your kid should rest. I'll keep the heat running." Leora nodded, holding Ari close. The human turned off the main lights, leaving only the soft hum of machines. For the first time in her life, she felt safe beside someone she didn't know. Outside, the storm raged stronger, roaring like an angry beast. Inside, a fragile warmth grew, not just from the heaters, but from something deeper. Leora watched the human through half-closed eyes. In her world, compassion was weakness. But here, in this tiny metal shelter on a dying planet, she saw it for the first time. And she didn't know yet. But this moment would change everything. When Leora woke, the storm was still roaring outside. The metal walls of the outpost groaned under the weight of the snow. The lights flickered softly, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and burned circuits. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw her child, Ari, sleeping peacefully under a warm blanket. His small chest rose and fell steadily. She let out a quiet breath. He was alive. Ethan, the human, was sitting near the heater, working on something metallic. Sparks flew from his tools as he repaired a damaged drone. His face was calm but focused. "You're awake," he said without looking up. "Your kid's temperature is stable now." "Thank you," Leora whispered. Her voice was weak but full of gratitude. Ethan finally turned toward her. "You should drink this." He handed her a cup of steaming liquid. She hesitated. Her people rarely accepted anything from outsiders, but the warmth felt too good to refuse. She took a sip and almost cried. It was sweet and full of life. "What is this?" she asked. "Hot chocolate," Ethan said with a grin. "Human comfort drink. Works better than medicine on bad days." Leora didn't understand his humor, but something about the way he smiled made her chest ache. No one had smiled at her like that before. He looked at her again, studying the faint scars on her arms. "You said pirates attacked you. Any idea why?" She shook her head. "They wanted our ship. We carried medical supplies for refugees. They killed everyone else. I escaped with Ari." Ethan's expression hardened. "Typical. Same scum that's been raiding outposts around this sector." There was silence for a while. The wind outside screamed like a dying creature. Then the human stood and checked a console. "Power levels are dropping. If this storm lasts another day, we'll lose heat." Leora's heart jumped. "What will happen if we lose heat?" Ethan looked at her seriously. "We'll freeze before morning." Her hands trembled. She looked at Ari, still sleeping peacefully. "Is there a way to stop it?" He nodded slowly. "There's a backup generator a few meters outside, but it's frozen solid. I'll need to go out there." "No," she said quickly. "You'll die in that storm." He gave a small laugh. "Wouldn't be my first time walking through hell." "Don't worry, I'll suit up." Before she could argue, he began preparing. Leora watched him pull on heavy armor, check his oxygen tanks, and attach heating pads to his gloves. Every movement was precise, practiced. She could tell he had done this 1,000 times before. Still, she couldn't understand why he cared. Why risk his life for strangers from another world? When he opened the airlock, the wind blasted in with a deafening roar. Snow swirled into the room like living ghosts. "Lock the door behind me," Ethan said. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, close the shutters and keep the heat for your kid." Leora's throat tightened. Why would you do this for us?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because someone once did it for me." And then he stepped out into the white death. The door sealed shut. Leora pressed her hand against the cold metal, listening. The sound of the storm swallowed everything. Minutes passed, 5, 10, 15. Each second felt like a lifetime. She couldn't stand it anymore. She wrapped Ari tighter and approached the console. The screen flickered with static, then a faint signal appeared, Ethan's tracker. He was moving slowly through the blizzard, his heartbeat steady but slowing. "Come back," she whispered. "Please come back." Then the signal spiked, followed by a warning tone. His vitals dropped sharply. "No." Without thinking, she grabbed Ethan's spare coat and oxygen mask. She wasn't built for this cold, but she couldn't let him die out there, not after what he'd done. The door hissed open again and the storm clawed at her face. She stepped into the endless white, her body screaming in pain as the cold bit into her skin. The snow was knee-deep. She could barely see 2 meters ahead. "Ethan," she shouted. "Where are you?" The only answer was the wind. She stumbled forward, following the faint blue light of his beacon. Then, through the swirling snow, she saw him, lying half-buried near the generator, his suit covered in frost. She ran to him, shaking his shoulder. "Ethan, wake up!" His visor flickered weakly. "Got it running," he murmured. The generator behind him hummed softly, glowing orange again. Leora's heart pounded. He had done it. "He saved them, please," she said, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You can't die." He smiled faintly, voice fading. "Told you. Humans are stubborn." She dragged him back through the snow, step by step, until the outpost lights appeared again. Her body burned with exhaustion, but she didn't stop. When they finally reached safety, she collapsed beside him. The heater's warmth surrounded them again, and she looked at him with new eyes. This man had risked everything for 2 lives that meant nothing to his world. And in that moment, Leora realized this was compassion. The thing her people said didn't exist. Outside, the storm began to fade. Inside, something new had begun to grow between them, something stronger than fear. The storm had finally calmed. The endless howling wind turned into a soft whisper, and the white snow outside glowed faintly under the light of Allaris 9's twin moons. Inside the small human outpost, the air was still, filled with the low hum of the newly repaired generator. Leora sat beside Ethan, watching over him. He lay unconscious on the cot, his face pale and his hands trembling slightly. His suit was covered in frost and his lips were a shade too blue. She had wrapped him in every blanket she could find, but even the heater's warmth didn't seem enough. Ari, the little alien child, had finally woken. His bright silver eyes blinked as he looked around, confused but alive. "Mother, where are we?" he asked softly. "Safe," Leora whispered, brushing his hair. "Because of him." Ari turned his gaze to the human lying nearby. "He saved us?" "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "He went into the storm for us." The boy frowned slightly. "But why?" "We are not his kind," Leora couldn't answer. She had wondered the same thing all night. On her world, the Verni didn't help outsiders. They didn't even help their own if it meant risk. Compassion was seen as weakness, an emotion that led to ruin. But this human, he had chosen to suffer for them. She reached out and touched Ethan's hand. It was rough, strong, and still faintly cold. Because, maybe to him, kindness isn't weakness, she whispered. Suddenly the console beside them beeped sharply. Leora jumped. The screen flickered to life, showing strange red symbols. She stared at them, confused, until the words translated into common tongue. Movement detected. South quadrant. 300 meters, her heart froze. Something, or someone, was out there. Ethan stirred weakly at the sound. His eyes opened halfway, gray and tired. What's going on?" "Movement near the outpost," Leora said quickly. "Your machine detected it." He groaned, forcing himself upright. "Damn. I was hoping the storm scared them off." "Who?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Pirates. Same ones who shot you down. I picked up fragments of their transmission before the storm hit." Fear gripped her chest. "They found us?" "Maybe, or maybe they're just scavenging. Either way, we can't stay here long." He stood slowly, wincing from pain but refusing to rest. "I'll check the perimeter." "No," she said firmly. "You're still weak," he gave a faint smile. "Yeah, but I'm also still breathing." "That's enough." Before she could stop him, he reached for his weapon, a compact energy rifle, and moved to the door. Leora followed close behind, her instincts screaming at her to stay near. When the outer door opened, a chilling silence met them. The storm clouds had cleared, revealing an endless field of glittering ice. The stars above reflected off the frozen plains like shattered diamonds. Then, in the distance, Leora saw it. Dark figures moving slowly across the snow. Ethan zoomed in his visor display. 3 of them, probably scouts. "They're searching for us," Leora whispered. Ethan crouched behind a metal crate and adjusted his rifle's settings. "Then we'll make sure they don't find anything." Leora stared at him. "You mean, fight them, alone?" He grinned faintly. "I don't plan on dying today. Besides, humans are good at surprises." She didn't know what that meant until he tapped the console on his wrist. The ground near the outpost lit up with small blinking lights, mines he had buried earlier just in case. As the pirates drew closer, the snow beneath them exploded with a sharp flash. 2 figures vanished in smoke and fire. The third stumbled backward, firing wildly into the white mist. Ethan took aim and shot once. The blast hit clean. Silence followed. Leora stood frozen, staring at the smoke curling into the cold air. You killed them." Ethan lowered his weapon slowly. "Or they would have killed us." She didn't know how to respond. Violence was something she had always feared, but in his eyes there was no joy in it, only necessity. He turned to her, voice soft but firm. "We have to move before their ship tracks the signal." "Can your kid walk?" "Yes," she said quickly. "But where will we go?" "There's a communication tower about 5 clicks east," Ethan said. "If it's still working, we can send a distress call to the nearest patrol." Leora looked toward the horizon. The tower was hidden somewhere beneath the frozen cliffs, a long, dangerous path. Ethan reloaded his rifle and grabbed a small pack. "We'll leave in an hour. The storm will start again soon." She nodded, helping Ari bundle up. As they prepared, she looked at Ethan, this human who kept risking everything without asking for anything in return. Her people would never understand it. But she was beginning to. When they stepped out into the open plains again, the wind picked up, carrying the faint echo of distant engines. Leora looked back once at the small outpost that had saved their lives. It now stood silent, covered in frost and ash. Ethan's voice cut through the cold. "Stay close, Leora. From now on, we move as one." She nodded, holding Aries' hand. The human walked ahead, scanning the horizon, his figure strong against the icy world. And deep inside her heart, for the first time in her life, Leora felt something new: trust. The wind was quiet now, but silence didn't mean safety. Ethan led the way across the frozen plains, his boots crunching over the hard ice. The twin moons of Allaris 9 hung low, painting the world in pale light. Behind him, Leora carried her son Aries, close against her chest. Every breath she took turned into white mist that vanished quickly into the cold air. They had been walking for almost 2 hours. The only sound was the hum of Ethan's scanner and the echo of their footsteps. Ahead, the mountains shimmered like glass, hiding the old communication tower somewhere among their cliffs. "How far?" Leora asked, her voice thin and trembling. "About another kilometer," Ethan replied, checking his wrist display. "But something's jamming the signal. I can't get a full reading." "Jamming?" Leora frowned. "From the pirates?" "Maybe," Ethan said quietly. "Or maybe from something worse." Leora didn't ask what worse meant. She didn't want to know. She looked down at her child. Aries' eyes were half closed, his small body shaking from the cold. Each step felt heavier. Then Ethan suddenly raised a hand. "Stop!" She froze. He crouched low, scanning the ground ahead. The snow had strange marks, deep circular impressions, like something heavy had landed there. Around them, small shards of black metal were half buried in the ice. Leora knelt beside one and brushed the frost away. It was smooth, sharp-edged, and burned. "This is not from our ship," she said. "No," Ethan replied grimly. "It's from theirs." He pointed toward the horizon. Far away, a faint red glow pulsed behind the ridge, like the heartbeat of something alive. "Pirate camp," he said. "They must have set up there when the storm hit." Leora's heart pounded. "Then we're walking straight toward them." "Not if we move smart." Ethan adjusted his scanner again. "There's a frozen tunnel system under these cliffs. It might lead us close to the tower without being seen." Leora hesitated. The idea of walking under the ice made her stomach twist, but she trusted him. "Then lead the way," she said. They found the entrance half hidden beneath a slope of snow, a narrow crevice glowing faintly blue from the crystal ice. Ethan crawled in first, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Leora followed, clutching Aries tightly. The walls around them sparkled, ancient air trapped for centuries inside the frozen layers. Inside the tunnel, it was strangely silent. Their voices echoed softly. Ethan stopped suddenly and whispered, "Lights off." The tunnel went black. For a moment, Leora thought something had gone wrong. Then she saw it. A soft red shimmer glowed deeper in the ice. Shapes moved behind the translucent walls, shadowy crawling things like living smoke trapped beneath the surface. "What are those?" Leora whispered. Ethan's face hardened. "Not pirates. Something older." He motioned for her to keep moving. "Stay quiet. Don't touch the walls." They crept forward slowly. The red light pulsed brighter with every step, as if the creatures could sense them. Leora's heart hammered in her chest. Aries whimpered softly, and she pressed her hand over his mouth, trembling. Finally, after what felt like forever, they reached the tunnel's end. Ethan pushed aside a block of ice, revealing an opening to the surface. Cold air rushed in. They climbed out onto a ridge overlooking a wide plain, and there it was. The communication tower stood in the distance, half collapsed but still glowing faintly blue. Its beacon flickered weakly like a dying star. "We made it," Leora whispered. Ethan nodded. "Let's hope it still works." But before they could move, a low rumble shook the ground. Snow slid from the cliffs above them. Then from the shadows below, red lights flickered, mechanical eyes turning in their direction. Ethan cursed. Drones. Metal shapes rose from the snow, pirate scouts, their armor black and scorched. They hovered silently, scanning the ridge. Ethan grabbed Leora's arm. "Run!" They sprinted down the slope as energy blasts tore through the air behind them. Ice exploded in bright flashes. Ethan turned and fired, his rifle glowing blue with each shot. One drone fell, then another, but more emerged from the fog. Leora shielded Aries with her body as they reached a frozen trench. Ethan dove beside her, breathing hard. "We can't outfight them," he said between gasps. But maybe we can outsmart them. How? He looked at the tower ahead. If we reach the beacon and overload its core, it'll send out a massive energy pulse. Enough to fry every machine within a kilometer. Leora's eyes widened. That could kill you too. He smiled faintly. Only if I don't move fast enough. Before she could argue, he reloaded and prepared to move. The human was bruised, frostbitten, and exhausted, but his eyes still burned with determination. Leora looked at him, realizing this man would risk everything again, not just for survival, but for them. She tightened her grip on Ari and whispered, "Then we go together." Ethan nodded. "All right then, let's make some noise." The wind began to rise again, carrying the sound of metal wings and charging weapons. The frozen plains glowed red and blue as the human and the alien ran side by side toward the dying tower, toward the only hope left in the ice. Snow whipped across the plains as Ethan and Leora ran, their boots crashing through the frozen crust. Behind them, the air exploded with light, pirate drones firing bright red beams that melted trails in the snow. Ethan fired back without slowing, his rifle's charge meter dropping fast. "Keep moving," he shouted. Leora clutched her son tightly, her heart pounding in her ears. The communication tower loomed ahead like a giant skeleton of metal and ice. Its once smooth frame was cracked and broken, wires dangling like frozen vines. At the top, a faint blue light blinked weakly, ancient but still alive. When they reached the base, Ethan slammed his hand against the control panel. It buzzed, then flickered to life. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen. "It's old tech," he muttered, trying to read the display. "Human, partly. This station's been here for decades." Leora looked around nervously. "Can it still send a signal?" "Maybe," he said. "But it's not just a relay. This thing's connected to something deeper, an old research network." He turned to her, his breath fogging in the air. "If we power it up, we might not just reach rescue. We might wake up whatever's been sleeping here." Before she could respond, a blast hit the ground nearby, sending shards of ice flying. Leora screamed as the shockwave threw her back. Ethan dropped to one knee and fired again. The nearest drone exploded in a burst of sparks. "Inside!" he yelled. They scrambled through the broken hatch into the tower's hollow core. It was dark, full of frost and silence. Long cables hung from the ceiling, glowing faintly with residual energy. Ethan pulled out a small flashlight and swept the beam across the walls. Symbols and data charts etched into the ice. "What is this place?" Leora whispered. Ethan frowned. "Looks like an old Terran research post, one of the first colonization attempts." This tower wasn't meant for communication. It was for studying the planet. He moved deeper, wiping frost off a display. The screen flickered and came to life, showing an old log entry. The voice that played was distorted but clear. Project Haven 9 status, failure. Environmental collapse detected. Remaining crew entering cryo-sleep. AI system Aura remains active for planetary monitoring. If recovery team arrives, do not awaken the core. The message ended with static. Leora stared at Ethan. "What does that mean?" He swallowed hard. "It means this place isn't dead. There's an AI here, and it's been awake all this time." As if responding to his words, the tower's lights flickered. A soft hum filled the air. Then from the walls, a calm female voice echoed through the cold metal. "Unauthorized presence detected. Identify yourselves." Leora froze. Ari whimpered, clutching her arm. Ethan stepped forward. "My name's Ethan Ward, human survivor. We're seeking emergency transmission access." The voice paused for a moment. Then it said, "Your identity code is outdated. This station recognizes no active human authority. State your purpose." "Refuge," Ethan said. "We're being hunted. We just need to send a distress call." "Request acknowledged," the AI replied. "However, external scans indicate hostile units approaching. Activating defense protocols." The floor beneath them rumbled. Outside, the snow exploded as old defense turrets rose from the ground, firing brilliant beams into the fog. Ethan's eyes widened. "It's protecting us." But then the AI's tone changed. "Warning. Energy reserves critical. Defense will terminate in 3 minutes unless core recharge is established." Ethan cursed. "That means I've got to get to the main core and restart it manually." Leora grabbed his arm. "You can't go alone." "I have to," he said firmly. "You stay here. Keep your kids safe." He ran toward a spiral staircase leading down into the tower's depths. The sound of gunfire and explosions shook the structure as the drones attacked outside. Leora wanted to stop him, but she knew he wouldn't listen. She held Ari close, whispering softly to calm him. "He'll come back," she said. "He always does." Down below, Ethan entered a massive chamber filled with glowing crystals and tangled wires. In the center stood a large circular core pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat buried under the ice. He approached it carefully. "All right, Aura. Let's wake you up." He connected his data pad to the control port. The core glowed brighter. The AI's voice filled the chamber again, softer now, almost human. "You shouldn't have come here, Ethan Ward. This world remembers pain. It was abandoned for a reason." Ethan's fingers froze over the console. "I don't care about the past. I just need power. Lives depend on it." "Then I will give it," the voice said quietly. "But understand, when you wake the planet, you wake everything." A burst of light filled the room as the core roared to life. Power surged through the walls, racing up to the top of the tower. Outside, the beacon ignited in a brilliant blue flame that pierced the clouds. Leora shielded her eyes as the light filled the sky. The pirates froze mid-attack, their machines glitching and falling silent. But beneath the snow, something else stirred, deep, ancient, and angry. Ethan staggered out of the chamber, his face pale. "Signal sent," he gasped. "Rescue ships will see it." Leora smiled with relief, then froze as the ground trembled. From beneath the plains came a low rising sound like thunder. Ethan turned toward the horizon, eyes widening. "Oh no, we woke something that was never meant to wake." The ice trembled like it was alive. A deep groaning sound echoed through the frozen plains of Allaris 9 as cracks spread across the ground. Blue light flickered inside the ice, moving, no, crawling like veins awakening after centuries of sleep. Leora clutched Ari close. "Ethan, what's happening?" Ethan's breath came out in white gasps. "Something ancient. The AI warned us. This planet was abandoned for a reason." He turned back toward the tower's core chamber where the light pulsed violently. "We overloaded it. The energy surge didn't just power the beacon, it woke up the planet's defense system." The ground split open with a thunderous roar. Ice shattered into jagged shards, and from beneath the fissure, massive metal shapes began to rise. Machines, half buried for ages. They were old, rusted, and alien in design. Huge constructs shaped like insects with eyes that glowed a dull crimson. Ari whimpered and buried his face in his mother's shoulder. Leora couldn't look away. "They're alive." "They're automated," Ethan said grimly, raising his rifle. "Ancient drones. Probably designed to protect the researchers who built this place. But from what?" Ethan didn't answer. Because at that moment, one of the metal giants turned toward the tower and screamed. It was a horrible mechanical howl that shook the air. The dormant drones across the plains responded, their eyes flashing to life one by one. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They sprinted through the snow as the ground erupted behind them. Huge claws tore out of the ice, sending frozen shards flying through the air. One of the drones lunged forward, crashing down where Leora had stood seconds before. Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her away just in time. "Move toward the cliffs." They ran, breathless, slipping and stumbling. Behind them, the ancient machines advanced, slow but unstoppable. Every step they took made the ground shudder. When they reached the edge of the cliffs, Ethan stopped. Below stretched a maze of ice canyons, deep and narrow. He pointed to a faint trail leading down. "We can lose them in there." Leora hesitated. "If we fall, then we fall together," Ethan said and jumped first. They slid down the icy slope, crashing through snow and ice until they reached the canyon floor. The wind howled above them. For a moment, everything was silent again, except for the faint hum echoing through the ground. Leora sat up, clutching Ari. "What are those things? Why would humans create such monsters?" Ethan shook his head. "They weren't monsters. Back then, we didn't know Allaris 9 was alive. The planet's core is artificial, part machine, part organic. When the first colonists tried to mine it, the planet fought back. The machines were built to contain it." He looked toward the tower far above. "But when we reactivated the core, we woke the planet's defense system and maybe the thing it was built to contain." Leora stared at him, fear and disbelief mixing in her voice. "You mean this planet is alive?" He nodded slowly. "Alive and angry." A deep rumble shook the canyon. Cracks raced up the walls and a bright blue glow spread beneath the ice. Ethan grabbed Leora's hand. "We have to move now!" They followed the narrow canyon, the walls glowing brighter as they ran. Ahead, the ice thinned, revealing something enormous buried inside, a gigantic coiled shape frozen beneath the surface. Ari pointed weakly. "Mother, it's moving." The thing beneath the ice opened an eye. It was vast and inhuman, glowing with ancient light filled with fury and memory. Ethan froze, whispering, "That's not a machine." The ground heaved. The ice exploded upward as a massive tendril burst free, made of crystal and metal intertwined. It lashed out, smashing into the canyon wall. Ethan fired, but his shots scattered uselessly against it. Leora screamed, shielding her child. "What is it?" Ethan pulled her back. The real core of the planet, whatever the humans tried to control, it never died. The tendril struck again, this time closer. He threw himself in front of Leora and fired his rifle until it overheated. The tendril recoiled slightly, but it wasn't enough. Then, through the chaos, a familiar voice echoed through the air, the AI, Aura. "Ethan Ward, the anomaly you awakened is merging with the defense grid. Evacuation is impossible." Ethan shouted back, "There has to be a way to shut it down." "There is," Aura replied calmly. "But it requires manual synchronization between human and Verni neural patterns. Only one of you can link with the core, and only one will survive the process." Leora stared at Ethan, eyes wide. "It means one of us has to die?" Ethan clenched his fists. "It means one of us has to save everyone else." The tendrils drew closer, wrapping around the broken ice. The air vibrated with energy. Ethan looked at her, his voice soft but steady. "Get your kid to safety. You've got a future to protect." "I don't..." Leora grabbed his arm. "No, you can't decide that. You saved us again and again. I won't let you throw your life away." He smiled faintly, frost gathering in his hair. "That's what compassion is, Leora. Doing the right thing even when it hurts." Before she could stop him, Ethan ran toward the glowing fissure, light swallowing his figure. "Ethan!" She screamed, reaching out, but he was already gone, descending into the blue heart of the planet. The light pulsed once, twice, and then the ground went still. Leora stood frozen in the canyon, the wind howling around her like a grieving spirit. The place where Ethan had vanished now glowed with a deep blue light, spreading outward through the cracks in the ice. It wasn't cold anymore. The air felt alive, charged with strange warmth, as if the planet itself had begun to breathe again. "Ethan," she whispered. Her voice was swallowed by the wind. Ari tugged at her sleeve. "Mother, where did he go?" Leora's throat tightened. "He went to stop it. To save us." Above them, the massive crystal tendrils trembled, pausing mid-air. The red glow in their cores flickered, replaced by a softer blue shimmer. The roar that had filled the sky began to fade, replaced by a slow rhythmic hum. Then came a voice, faint at first, but unmistakable. "Leora, can you hear me?" Her eyes widened. "Ethan?" "Yeah," the voice said weakly, almost inside her mind. Guess the link worked. She looked around, searching the cliffs, the sky, anywhere. "Where are you?" "Everywhere," he said. "The core, it's not just a machine. It's alive, like a mind buried under the planet. I can feel it thinking. It remembers everything." Leora held Ari close, her heart pounding. "Can you shut it down?" "I'm trying," Ethan's voice said, strained but steady. "It's angry, confused. It thinks humans came to destroy it again. I'm showing it what really happened, that we're not all like that." The ground pulsed beneath her feet. Streams of blue light flowed outward like veins, spreading warmth through the canyon. The massive constructs that had attacked them were now motionless. Their red eyes dimmed. Leora could feel something, an emotion that wasn't hers. Sadness. Regret. The planet was listening. "Ethan," she said softly, "it's working." "Maybe," he said, "but I don't know how long I can hold it. The system's merging with my mind. Once the synchronization finishes, I won't be able to leave." Her chest tightened. "No, you promised you'd come back." A long pause. Then in a gentle voice he said, "I didn't lie. I'll still be here, just not the way you think." Leora's knees gave way and she fell beside the fissure, tears freezing on her cheeks. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," he whispered. "But listen, I can make sure you and your son survive. The planet's core has energy reserves. enough to melt the surface ice and restart the atmosphere. It'll make Allaris 9 livable again, a new home, for both humans and Vernae. Leora looked at the endless horizon, the broken world now glowing with gentle light. Why would you do this for us? Because you taught me something I'd forgotten, Ethan said, his voice fading like an echo through water. Compassion isn't weakness. It's what makes life worth protecting. Suddenly, the entire planet shook. The blue light flared upward in a brilliant column that reached the sky. Clouds shattered apart, revealing the first sunrise Leora had ever seen on Allaris 9. A golden light spreading across the frozen plains, turning the ice into rivers of glass. Ari gasped. "Mother, it's beautiful." Leora held him tightly, crying and smiling at once. "Yes, my son, it is." The tower on the horizon blazed with energy, sending a pulse through the sky, a message of life, not distress. In orbit above, distant satellites and ships would see it, not as a cry for help, but as a beacon of rebirth. Then, for a moment, everything went still. The voice in her mind faded to a whisper. "Take care of him. For me, Ethan," she screamed. But there was no reply, only the sound of the wind and the steady heartbeat of the planet. Hours passed. The storm clouds were gone. The air was warmer now, and the snow began to melt into clear pools that reflected the sunlight. The giant machines that had once hunted them stood silently, now guardians instead of killers. Leora looked down at her son. "We'll live," she said softly, "because of him." As they walked toward the horizon, she noticed something new, a faint glow beneath the ice where Ethan had vanished. It pulsed gently, in rhythm with the planet's heartbeat. Ari pointed at it. "Mother, it's like he's still here." Leora smiled through her tears. "He is, Ari. He became part of this world." High above, the communication beacon flickered one last time, sending out a signal into the stars, Ethan's final message. "To whoever finds this world, know that compassion saved it. Don't forget what it means to care." The transmission ended. Silence returned to the plains, but it was a peaceful silence. Alive, warm, filled with hope. Leora and her son walked across the thawing ice, their figures small against the vast new dawn. The planet hummed beneath their feet, its heart reborn, carrying within it the soul of one brave human. And as the first flowers began to bloom through the melting snow, the legend of Ethan Ward, the man who melted a world's heart, was born.